Avebury. We did about 3 lectures on Avebury, and we did a bit about Avebury each time we did it. So I wanted to do Maes, howe as like that's a little bit more about Maes, howe, and that's over and done with.
Oh.
So we are actually on record now, and I've got I said, Drina, you're very happy today. We've got an announcement. I actually had a text on Monday from Caroline, who's Sandra's daughter, to say that sadly she had passed away on Saturday.
Oh.
So sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Another sad friend gone.
Yeah.
yes. So you're not the only one who call her a friend, Peter. So yeah, exactly. So yeah. So
Friend to all of us. I mean, when she
Yeah.
was on here with us all, she was a friend to us all.
yeah,
She
friend to us all. Yeah. No, I didn't mean a competition, Pete. I just wanted to say that it's like I've known her for quite some time as well. So
Yeah.
I've known
Well,
her since 2007.
No, a lot
And,
longer than I do. I have, yes.
Yeah, I've known her since 2007, and do you know what? Right, I don't remember lots of things about different things because I get so many things coming into my head, which has to go out, and you don't remember it. But I always remember her husband's name, Vincent.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it not not that I know anyone else's husbands and wives. It's just I remember Vincent. Because the first thing that she did when she came to one of our classes was she was a little bit angry because her husband had retired, and only a few years earlier he'd just passed away, and he'd on his retirement within about 6 months. They had all these great plans and stuff. They had this place in Spain, and he just passed away with about 6 months after he retired. But so what she wanted to do is have little interests and things. So she took up archaeology, and that's it really. So
One of the amazing things with Sandra, the fact that quite often when you were looking at these places, she'd had been there.
Yeah.
And she was able to describe it.
Yeah.
Yes, she had been to these places. Yeah. So well, unusually it was like Ephesus and places like that, and I've been there. Okay, right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So obviously the Great Pyramids and all those different types of places. So anyway, I wanted to mention that, and I don't know what the arrangements are, but I will keep you abreast.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Because I don't know what happens with these things half the time. The thing is, I do have to deal with these things a bit, Dennis and obviously Gilbert and so on, and it's good that somebody's contacted you and said, look, this has happened. So I appreciate that. Hopefully everybody has had a copy of Illicit Pillar this month.
Yes, thank you.
Oh yes, I haven't read it yet, but yes.
Got it this morning.
Yeah,
Good.
me too.
Good. That's our Rona getting that out to you all. So that's brilliant. So any news from anybody tonight? Pat, anything you'd like to tell us? Pat disappeared. Oh God. It's going to be one of those evenings. Oh God, what was that, Pat?
I'm here.
Any news?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Where have you been?
Any news, my lovely?
Oh, no news. No, sorry.
All right,
Just been in the
fair enough.
house.
Distracted by the dog.
I have been watching the things about impossible inventions of the Romans and stuff. Remember the 2 ships you told us about, the Caligula? Out of the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, they covered that and how they built that, and so it's been going on and on. It's quite good, You just watch one after another.
They reckon they found a 3rd ship? in Lake Diana. So if
Really? Oh,
yeah.
right.
The one thing, the irony is, if they found the third ship, then they could raise it, and there's an empty museum for it to go into, which was once occupied by the other ships. That's the irony of it. But the irony is that if there is a third ship, then it would mean that they could use all modern technology to excavate it and preserve it and all the rest of it. So that'd be quite useful. Anyway, thanks for that, Pat. Thank you. So thanks. Peter, anything from you?
No, nothing for me.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Drina.
Not archaeology, but there's going to be a supermoon tomorrow night.
Ooh, is there?
So they said,
A
yeah.
supermoon.
Yeah. Allowing for cloud, obviously.
Oh, here's Andy.
Allowing for cloud. Okay, fair enough. Do you know, can you remember the eclipse that time? A few those years ago, was it
In the 90s.
1997 or
Yes.
whatever it was? Yeah.
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 I can remember it was one of the most disappointing experiences ever, because it was cloudy. So
Oh, it wasn't.
anyway,
Wasn't
We were
here.
down in Cornwall at the Lizard to watch it. And with 1,000 bikers who came
Oh,
and
crummy.
were all camped around us. My brother had set up the catering for all these bikers.
Oh,
well, at least you
So
had free
had
sausage
1,000
rolls.
bikers there watching the eclipse.
I remember going from work, we all went outside and we did something with a piece of paper. I can't remember what it was. That you couldn't look at it directly, but you could look at a piece of paper and it kind of appeared on the paper somehow.
You'd look at the paper, and I know. Or you could have just looked at a photograph a day later. Anyway, anyway, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Peter. Thanks. I forgot we were bloody asking what now. My head's gone. Oh God, I think this is funny.
Talking about the moon. Have you seen that program with the Irish fella?
Dara, yes.
Dara O'Brien.
Yeah.
About the moon. It was fascinating.
is it good? Yeah, I've recorded it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just interrupt, as I'm always doing, right? It's just one of the I mentioned the moon. Obviously, the Indians have managed to
Working very well.
land.
We've managed to blur the background. So sorry. Sorry.
Andy, that's
sorry.
brilliant.
Sorry.
You've put
Andy,
yourself
I'm
in
loving
very
it. I'm
sharp
loving it. Andy's
focus.
technology. Right, no, the Indians have just landed on the moon, and I'm just thinking, right, that's brilliant. But the point is I've been making for quite some months, is this almost people come up with conspiracy theories about why the Americans haven't been back to the moon since 1974 and so on. And my thing that I've been banding on about on my YouTube channel is that I believe that we've technologically got inept, and we don't have the technology to go to the moon anymore. That may sound absolute nonsense, but one thing in human history that we do know, the build up to the First World War, we had all that technology to go into the First World War. And then technology sort of died down a little bit. And then we have the Second World War, and then we're able to do rockets and stuff. And it seems that technologically, even though computers seem to be a little bit better, we haven't really advanced in civilization. And as students of history and archaeology, that's something that has been repeated time and time again throughout history. When we look at the Islamic world, they got to the height of science and everything, and slowly but surely the Ottoman Empire, it started to get stagnant and all that technology disappeared, or shut up somewhere. And we see this with the Roman world as well. Technology in Europe advanced massively, and suddenly there's the stagnation. And I'm glad you mentioned the moon now. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. Right, Andy, anything you would like to tell us today?
No, nothing archaeological. So apart from Claire got me a T-shirt, but which I'll go and get you. I'll show you in a minute. But,
By the way, these are the trousers I wore at Hawkwind yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
Look at
Hawkwind?
these.
Sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to Hawkwind yesterday, and these were the trousers I wore. Look at those.
Where was that at?
That was at Chepstow Castle.
Oh,
Oh my God, they're smelling of weed still.
God,
I've seen Auckland a few times.
have you?
Oh, hey,
Yes.
I tell you what, Andy, these were so good, right? But however, I was getting people coming up to me asking me for a photograph with me, saying, "Oh, hi, Carl, can I have a photograph with you?" And I'm thinking, is that something I don't know?
Oh dear. Yeah, that's
It's
worrying.
just like I was just thinking, am I in the newspaper or something or something? Right? This wasn't just one or two people. This was like 6, and I was just thinking, I don't get this. So there's something out there about me which I don't know, but people were saying, "Oh, hi, Carl." Thinking, really strange. Anyway, I had to compete with Andy's T-shirt there. Right. Anything else, Andy? No.
No,
Okay.
except Karen was on stage with them last time we saw them. So
Whoa.
Oh, now come
Andy.
on, Andy. That's just bloody showing off.
You look as if you've got an egg on top of your head,
I was
Andy.
just
have
thinking,
I? Oh, that it's the clock behind me. Is that
Yeah,
a mispositioned clock?
it
That's
just looked like a boiled egg on
is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the third computer I've tried to connect onto tonight.
oh,
My
But it's looking
computer
good.
crashed about 2 days ago, and I can't get it to start again. So I thought, oh, I'll use one of the other ones, but they haven't been used for like 6 months, and they just won't connect up. So I'm on Karen's laptop finally, which it connected up straight away. I must admit.
Yeah, good.
I've done it as well. I've blurred as well. I thought I'd do it. Yeah.
I
All right, Gina.
don't want you seeing my background.
I don't want you seeing my background as well. I don't want you seeing me, nor does Peter.
Andy's gone now.
Right. Okay. Gina, anything you'd like to say before we crack on?
No, I did. I told you about the supermoon.
Oh yeah, and look
Yeah,
at the
forgot
direction that took us in. Christ. Right, okay. I'm just looking to see. There doesn't seem to be any messages from any of the other two tonight. So I don't know what's happened with David and so today we're going to be looking at 2 sites, many distances apart. We're looking at Wayland Smithy, and we're looking at maes, howe. Now, I did say a few moments ago that what I'm not going to do is do a massive lecture about maes, howe, because it's a site that we keep coming across. There's also something else that I've done. Rona has sent you a plan of the Ness of Brodgar, right? With a little shirty note with it saying, make sure you have this map with you for the next few weeks, because when we do the lecture on the Ness of Brodgar, if you haven't got the map with you and you can't follow the lecture because you've lost the map, it's tough. Because I've had to, Rona gets paid on the time that she does, so to send those maps out to everybody, it's don't make sure you don't lose it. Right, anyway, so again, that was maes, howe, and Ness of Brodgar, and we keep mentioning maes, howe. So what we are going to do is I'm going to show you a video that I said I was going to show you, but this is nothing to do with the lecture. This is to do with the light show at the Hawkwind concert. Well, Andy, because you come on late, right? There we go. Hang on, let's play it. Hang on. Why is it not playing? Hang on a minute. Oh, hang on. Where is it? Right. Let's just. Oh, there you go. There I am. That's one of the fans who come up to me. Yeah, there you go. And there it is. There's part of the light show. I loved it. It was great. And this was actually at Chepstow Castle. Yeah. So it was like shining up onto the castle walls. It was absolutely brilliant, right? And look at that. It might not be any of your sort of thing, but well, I liked it anyway.
It wasn't that Soul Fest, was it?
Oh no, this was at Chepstow Castle.
Ah,
Did you get any of the music then? Anyway,
no.
all right. Yeah,
You could sing it to us, one of their songs.
yeah. There
Oh,
I am.
no. No.
No.
What's wrong with that?
Not very nice picture.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you, Andy, to put on the wall.
Michelle's looking really well.
Yeah.
I don't know about me. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Anyway, let's crack on. Right. So what we are going to do is we're going to go here now. As you can see, it says Wayland Smithy's Cave. Now that's a good introduction to Wayland Smithy. Wayland Smithy's Cave. Now, it's a really odd site, Wayland Smithy, and if anyone knows anything about Wayland, right? Wayland is the name of a Germanic smithy, right? Hence, Wayland Smithy. There's a whole legend associated with Wayland. And where is this site? Well, it's in the south of England, and we'll show you where it is in a minute. But what I wanted to do is just get a few words into your mind, sort of look at maps and sort of do this type of thing that we don't really do much with as a rule. Now, you can obviously make out there when you get one thing on maps, when you get wording in italics, it refers directly to an archaeological site, right? They still do it today, right? This I do believe is off probably a map that's 100 years old or something. But the italics is what we use on a map even today to define an old site. So the word cromlech there and the word tumulus, right? Now, the word lech or lechai is a Welsh word which means stone, right? Tumulus means a mound, right? So this both refers to a monument in the past, which is of prehistoric origin. Now, when you get the word cromlech or tumulus marked on a map, it inevitably defines that you're looking at a prehistoric site, right? So bear all that in your sort of analysis as you start to think. And these little lines here are called howe lines. Now, if anyone knows anything about mapping, a howe line, if I draw a howe line on here, there's two different types of howe lines. Basically, let's do one type of howe line that's like that, or another howe line that's like that. Basically, what howe lines are is that there is the top of the bank, and that there is the bottom of the bank, and that's how you can read height on a monument like this. So it's always good to be reminded of little things like this in these types of presentations. Wayland Smithy's Cave, Wayland Smithy. Now, this is a large chambered long barrow. It's not easy to get to unless you know where you're going. And as Peter experienced, remember that day, Pete? It's over this field, Pete. Come on.
Yeah.
Next field.
I remember it
Pete.
well.
It's in the next field, Pete. And we're getting to the next field. Where the bloody hell is it, Carl? I can remember Pete's word. It's over there, Pete. It's in the next field. Anyway, we eventually got to it, and you know, this is a very, very interesting location. And what we're going to do is
Certainly
give you
was.
yeah, certainly was. We'll come back to that in a moment, right? But you can get an idea of this is an English heritage plan of where this is. And further there, right, what you have is White Horse Hill, Uffington Castle, and you've got a routeway that leads down and to Wayland Smithy itself. There it is. It's sort of draped, not on top of the hillock, but on the side of this, as described, ridgeway. And where is it? There it is. It's south of Swindon, and it's sort of over to the right from Bristol. So to give you an idea of this type of site, it's within a great landscape of history and archaeology. You know, we've mentioned White Horse Hill, Uffington White Horse. Uffington is the White Horse that you can actually see from the train as you go down to London on the southern side. As you, I'm going to get this wrong now, as you leave Swindon, as you go towards Reading, you look on the right and you can see the White Horse. Oh no, oh yeah, that's right, because as I was coming from Reading to Swindon, I would always look out knowing I was coming home. When I used to work in London, and when I had a relationship with somebody in that way, you could see the White Horse and you could see the banks and ditches of Uffington Castle, couldn't you, Peter? And you come across the ley line.
That's exactly what I'm just going to say. When we were at the Uffington Fort, in the doorway, Michelle had found the hazel stick, and I used it to douse with it. It doused in the opening, the way out of the fort, and that was a ley line. Yes. It indicated a ley line. I couldn't stop the twig from reacting to it.
And you just kept going,
these things, and you just can't stop the reaction.
And you kept going, Pete. Exactly, you kept going.
Yep. Yep.
So this site itself, as we head towards it, and you know, this is an Ordnance Survey map, and you've got to go trudge across these fields. There you go, Pete. There's more than one field. It's the next field, Pete. So you go across these fields, and there was probably an easier way of getting there, Pete, but you know what I'm like. Pat knows me too well.
Yeah.
And so Wayland Smithy is on this sort of landscape of downs and ridgeways, and you know there's descriptions. You know, you can think about this site. It's nowhere, and it's sort of. It's a weird space. It's a weird monument indeed. It's very, very strange. It's not like most monuments that we would see in Britain. Yeah, people would agree. And there it is. It's a very big site, right? And what it is, you get to the front of it and you walk all the way around. You keep going around. The brown bits of stones. You keep going around. You keep going around, a bit worn out. And you come back along. And there's actually two sets of monuments there. You can get an idea there that it's 30 meters from that sort of ditch. You could see the Houcher lines indicate that that's a ditch. That's a ditch, not a bank. So there's a ditch. And so it's 30 meters across, and you can get an idea. That's 15 meter scale. So you're going 15, 30, 45, 60 plus meters in length. So it's quite an amazing site. And you could think about this as being Wayland Smithy is a monument that is being recorded and planned at a very early stage. And in a way, it's a bit like Maes Howe, because when you think about Maes Howe on Orkney, people are aware of it before most other sites in Orkney. They're obviously not aware of the Nessa Brodgar archaeology that they're excavating now, because nobody knew about that 30 odd years ago. But they knew about this site, and they knew about the Maes Howe on Orkney. Now, Wayland Smithy was first recorded by the Berkshire Charter, or the Berkshire Chronicles, in the year 955 AD. So this monument has been known about by in the minds of people as an ancient monument for over 1,000 years. And maes, howe has been known as a monument for over 1,000 years because the bloody damnable Vikings got there. At this site has been known about by the Saxons in their charter, their Berkshire charter, their Saxon land boundary charter, 955 AD, as Wayland's Smithian. Wayland's Smithian. So in other words, Wayland's smithy, the name it has been referred to for over 1,000 years. Very few locations in Britain have the honor of having a name that's very, very old. And obviously, when we think about this monument, what we've got to do is we've got to think about the context of the people who are actually recording it over 1,000 years ago in the year 955 AD. But by this site itself, as it's seen today, was a mound of earth, chalk, and sarsen stones, and the bones within it had already been quietly trying to mind its own business in this remote corner of what would eventually become Oxfordshire for some 4,500 years. These bones had been quietly disappearing, eroding away, being moved by animals, moved by humans, and all sorts of things. So it's a rather interesting, odd monument of the age, of the experience of archaeology. And again, here we go, visible long barrow, okay. Earlier barrow, no longer in use. So what we've got it's saying that we've got two sets of monuments, right? This is what you see, right? And then behind it is another monument, right? So there's two monuments in one. And this is how we're going to think of this, right? So Wayland Smithy is a monument obviously known about for 1,000 years. People must have been curious, like the site of maes, howe. They must have been curious. They must have been after bones and little keepsakes. Maes, howe would have been completely cleared out by the Vikings hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Some of the bones from this site were still there when archaeologists got there in the early 1920s, 1919, 1920. Now, this site being excavated at the end of the First World War, as Wayland Smithy being excavated there, the full history of the site was not really uncovered at that stage. But what they did when they were excavating this site, they had an idea of something, of the nature of this monument within this very rich landscape of archaeology. It wasn't until the 1960s, 1962, 1963, that Stuart Piggott, yes, that guy's name still comes up, the guy who was involved in the excavation of Sutton Hoo. Stuart Piggott was involved in the excavations here, and also another chap by the name of Richard Atkinson. Both Atkinson and Piggott are massive prehistoric experts in regards to the south of England, and they were excavating there in 1962, 1963. So that this plan gives you an idea of the depth of complexity of such an archaeological monument. As we move on, what we do see is this. It looks odd, doesn't it, Pete?
It does.
Very odd. Now, one thing we're going to be very wary of is the fact that the site has been mucked around with by antiquarians and so on, and in a later stage. One thing I'm reminded of saying, and you know, this is to remind Andy and Margaret, I haven't forgotten about that little project that we're going to be doing online in regards to images and analyzing structures and stuff. So I haven't forgotten that. That comes in directly to the following points. Sometimes in archaeology and history, what we see, we always believe existed. But in many ways, what we see is sometimes a facade, because when you look at this, that's obviously been added, that's been added, that's been added. And then you start to think, oh my God, do those stones always look like this? So what we need to do is look at a couple of plans like this one here. We like plans, don't we? So this is that one in the middle there. That's that one there. That's what we're going to look at first. That one. We're going to look at that arrangement, right? And if we go back, we look at this. There we go. Plan of Wayland Smithy phase 1. And it says Karn material. That's going to usually be sort of Karn. No, Karn is usually the word given for stone. But in this instance, the Karn also relates to earth and stone. When we use the word Karn, it's usually in an area where there's lots of stone. Well, in Wiltshire, there's lots more earth than there is stone. Leave that one there. So
Sort of a stone marker, Karen.
Yes, but it's yes, but unfortunately, the word Karn, Peter, is not being used in the right context. It should say barrow material rather than Karn material. Yeah. So Peter, with that inference, is right. 1962, 1963, the site was excavated and it was partially restored. Right, and it was a multi-stage site, a Neolithic monument that began its life as a place of the dead. Now, that's an interesting challenge for me, right? And you should say, you should see the actions I'm actually using. I'm sort of getting very airy-fairy with my hands at this minute, sort of pointing to me. You know my thoughts about these types of sites. You know, and we've discussed this, that some of these monuments, like Mid-Howe last week, when we looked at Mid-Howe last week, we thought, was it always a burial monument? Could it have been used for something else? And then it was used for burials, and then it was used for something else, and so on. But this clearly looks like it started off as a burial monument, which is slightly different from lots of the other sites that we've been examining. And it's a mixture of the material, the Karn material, the earth and the stone. It's a mixture of a stone curb around the black stones, a stone curb, a quarry ditch, and there are timber posts as well. Now, this isn't as big as the eventual monument. The great prehistorians Atkinson and Piggott discovered, buried beneath the mound of the existing barrow, they dug through the existing barrow and actually found this. They weren't aware that this was there. They weren't aware of this earlier monument as we're seeing here. They weren't aware that this was here. And they dug and they found beneath the mound of the existing barrow consisted of a sarsen stone, a boulder pavement measuring nearly 5 meters by 1.5 meters, lined along its east and western flanks by stone banks with large D-shaped split oak posts sunk into pits at the northern and southern end. So we've got oak, we've got timber being used. With that description, is very, very difficult to work out from this plan what we're exactly seeing. But what we've got a sarsen pavement, we've got a sarsen base, we've got a floor, we've actually got a proper floor. And then the other words that spring to mind in that, we've got large D-shaped split oak posts sunk into pits at the northern and southern ends. So you've got those D-shaped pits. And what's in them is oak. These posts are thought to have held some kind of roof above this. So we're talking about something more engineered to have a roof. We had a problem last week about a roof with mid-howe, and then there was whether I'm getting my two lectures confused. Last week when we had the problem with mid-howe, and I said about the roof, one of my people on the Tuesday evening, he said, look, I found the report from 1934. And he said, actually, the archaeologists said that they may have found a roof, but they weren't sure it was a roof. And therefore it was a roof and then it wasn't. And I said, yeah, that's really helped me lots. So what we are saying, last week's lecture, that when they did excavate, they actually found slabs that may have indicated a roof. But that wasn't in my lecture, and that wasn't in the initial notes that I gave you last week. So I wanted to put that in there, right? But what they're saying is that maybe the D-shaped structures on either side may have created some kind of planked support for roofing, upright post for a planked roof of some description. And what we've got on the right hand side is these other posts, two lines of posts converging on the south end of the structure may have formed some kind of external structure. We don't really know. Now, this itself was a rather interesting discovery, because being blurred with lots of lectures and being sort of trying to get a sense of what's going on, right? Let's just presume that this had a burial idea behind it with this monument, which is sat, if we want to put this into perspective, there in the middle. So the green thing was first, and then everything else was second. And one thing that starkly looks out at me by looking at this is that the first monument looks circular. It doesn't look really linear. You know, those D-shaped sort of pits with oak in them and so on. And we're thinking, right, okay, there's a lot more going on here. And then the later monument is more linear. Now, interestingly enough, if we just, I'm going to keep with this in mind, because it makes it look a little bit more clearer on this one, to be honest. And you've got those little posts there going in a southerly direction. So we've got the right orientation here, really. So within this chamber excavated in the 1960s, what they did find, they found the bodies of 9 men and 3 or 4 women, mainly aged between about 20 to 40. Now, right, okay, I've read that out. 9 men and 3 or 4 women, right? I'm not happy with that wording, but let's just round her up. 4 women. And overall, they were aged between 20 and 40. That's interesting. We've got an interesting mix there. More men, less women, whatever. But some of the men could have been misidentified and could have been women. But anyway, let's just... So we've got 13 individuals, and a child of about 9 to 10 years old had been placed had been placed along with some arrowheads. And interestingly enough interesting about these arrowheads is that some of these arrowheads may have seen the end of 3 of those individuals. So in other words, by the looks of it, some of the arrowheads had shown to see some damage to the bones of at least 3 of the individuals that are actually buried here, right? So, oh, what does that mean? Does that mean people were fighting and killing people at that stage? Well, okay, if they're injuries caused by arrowheads, then I'm going to concur. They ended up having a violent death, which is very much opposed to most of my lectures when I'm usually saying that the Neolithic was quite a peaceful period. But for me to get out my little predicament, the South was a lot more occupied than other parts of the country. And it's likely that there may have been some shenanigans afoot. We don't find evidence of people dying at this stage through fighting or any other things. But we got 3 individuals who died at the hands of arrowheads, right? Which is very, very interesting, very different from most of the narratives in most of my lectures. And I will concur that history, as we know, is not all nice and happy and everything going bump in the night. Things are not always amazing in prehistory, and particularly this stage in prehistory. So again, we've got evidence of people dying, in other words, other than natural causes. So the other thing as well is that green area there. What is rather interesting is it dates from at least 5,600 years ago, right? So that's rather interesting. That's where the radiocarbon dates have actually put it. The bones and the other evidence, radiocarbon dates, are put at least 5,600 years ago. One of the problems with that is that the radiocarbon dates were actually taken in the 1960s, right? And radiocarbon dating wasn't as advanced then, so we might have different results today. This is why sometimes we say, why don't we excavate something in a few years' time when the technology is a little bit better? That type of thing. Later, after a period of abandonment, a cairn of sarsen boulders along with chalk rubble quarried from side ditches was heaped over the mortuary structure to a height of nearly 2 meters to form an oval barrow measuring about 16 meters long by 8 meters. There it is, nicely getting an idea there. The ditches either side, the material humped up on top, maybe, with a mixture of chalk and mixture of bits of stone and all the rest of it. That might cite the idea of actually calling it a cairn rather than a barrow. But we've referred to it as both. The barrow itself, sort of oblong shaped thing, a barrow. And when we think about it, at the widest point, with sarsen blocks placed against the sides of the mound to form a low revetment wall. So in other words, what we've got around the outside, we've got these sarsen stones, which are actually similar to the fact that put sarsen stones along the monument, which is later, the brown stuff, which is later. And rather interestingly enough is that what we've got, the dates that we've got from this, the dates that we've got from this tell us at least, as I've said, at least 5,600 years ago. But it's likely that the black stones were added no later than 5,470 odd years ago. So after the burials and stuff in there, they've added the stones around the outside. That's interesting, and from the point of view that's really interesting. And why is that interesting? I'm not going to ask you to guess, right? But that a monument has been created, right? So a monument has been created. Obviously, we know the red stuff is timber, the black stuff is the sarsen stones, and then you've got the floor, right? We got radiocarbon dates. So what is intriguing, right, is that we can clearly say that number one there, that's being dedicated at least 5,600 years ago, right? these stones here, all these black stones here, were being added 5,470 years ago, right? Which for those that are good at their maths, that's about 130 years distance in time between one and the X. So in other words, the people that were responsible for placing those in the middle there, in that grey area, were also the same people putting stones around the outside. And why is that important? Well, it's important. You can disagree with that, but I want to argue that that's the case. And the reason why I want to argue that that's the case, why would you bother wasting time doing anything if these people weren't anything to do with you, if they were no relation, right? If they were no link after 130 years, right? Or maybe I'm seeing something that you see and I can't see it, right? The reason why this is massively important is because when you look at monuments like Stonehenge and Avebury, which seemingly have been started and finished over a period of 2,000 years, there's no possibility. And again, you can slap me across the face and say you're going overboard, Carl. There's no possibility that the people who actually built it were the same people or related to the people who did the last stuff at Stonehenge 2,000 years later. You know, it's the odds of that being the case are really remote, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the links between the people who were first placed in there and built it are the same links with the generations of the people that dug the ditches around the ditch there, the grey, and quarried the material to place above the interments and also the stones around the outside. You can say I'm wrong on that. You can say that you're seeing something different, which is fine. I'm okay with that. We can argue that or whatever. That's what we do these. So the next thing that we do is stop that there. And what we are going to do is not look at me talking. We're going to do there. We're going to go back. We're going to look at all this other stuff. Now, the stuff that Peter was intrigued by is that there. This is what we're seeing, right? That's what he saw. What he was looking at was that. That's what Peter's more interested in. Well, I'm not saying that's what Peter's more interested in. I'm saying that's what Peter saw first. After looking at me saying, "You lying little shit, I had to walk a mile to get here and you were lying to me all the way." That's how I get people out in the middle of fields, by just saying it's just over there, and eventually they eventually get there. So this is what Pete and I would have been seeing, and I'm pretty sure that Pat's been there with me as well. But again, look at that. As we sort of look at this and we think, interesting. So the other thing that's misleading, right? That's misleading. Look at that. The other thing that's misleading is that if we go to there, it's almost as if these little brown things here are little stones, and they just little, small things. But as we can actually see from the images, they are not little piddly little small things. These are big boulders. Now that's again interesting. They put a lot of effort into this. Now, when we look at monuments like this, like Tinkerswood Burial Chamber, we see little stones around the outside, and that indicates the outline of the site. But this indicates more, that there's more going on. That there's more of a sense of ambience. There's more of a sense of connection with the actual mound. And I just want to check this in, because we will actually be coming back to this, right? Look at that there, 1670, right? So this was one of the earliest monuments in Britain to be actually drawn and relished and loved. And I know it looks a bit odd there, and it sort of looks a bit strange, but that is a nice little oldie-worldy plan of people really being interested in these monuments, 350 years ago. Again, this is 350 years ago that this plan was actually created by our friend Aubrey. And we got a few people watching online. So thank you very much, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So if we, oh, look at that there. That's what Pete would have seen as well. For me, I feel uneasy looking at these images because I want it to be virgin territory. I want to be looking at something that's fresh and clean and ambient. But it's not. And that's, I always feel aggrieved when I'm looking at something that's not exactly what was originally found. And that's in many ways being an archaeologist, finding things for the first time, or being in front of a camera, telling people something or performing something for the first time. It's always that. But when it's changed and altered, it's not always fresh, and it doesn't look fresh to me as it is. But let's go back to what Atkinson and Piggott excavated, and let's look at the next phase. And you know, there is a little bit more to sort of experience with this, and what we will do is we will probably take a break in about 8 minutes or so, just so I can make sure I got everybody's bed, and we'll ask questions. So let's go back to that other little bit of a plan there, that one. So this is the excavation now, and again, this is by our friends Atkinson and Piggott, and you can clearly see that that maybe that's what they were excavating, and maybe, you know, how much of this is reconstruction, right? Again, we know my thoughts on that. So going back to this, and again, look at that there. So when I was just look at that there, you know, we're talking about a mound of 60 meters. You know, archaeology 60 meters. It's not all been excavated. So focus. The ditches of the earlier barrow had been probably silted up or were filled in, and its mound was subsumed within a much larger body of a long trapezoidal chalk, rubble, and turf barrow. Now, the word trapezoidal is not a term that I usually use because my head's sort of too far up looking at stuff in Orkney or something like that. Trapezoidal shaped mound, trapezoidal shaped piece of archaeology is typical of these types of sites in Wiltshire, some of the ones in Wales. And what did we say? There's some terminologies that archaeologists use. Cotswold 7 burial chamber. You know, I don't like using those terms, but there was a trapezoidal typed burial chamber. They're not all from the Cotswold 7 estuary area. You know, there's some down in London way, but it's what we do to classify things, which is not something I always follow. So again, you know, this monument, some of it being reconstructed, the side ditches from which the chalk were quarried in the north and the south are not really visible, and what's happened as well is that lots of what we do see with this monument has been affected by later agricultural activity, i.e. the ditches on either side. And whether there were other stones with this monument as well, and whether there was more of a mound on top of it, and all these things have been altered. Now, with the ditches more or less silting up and being filled, that was in the prehistoric context, in a Roman context. In other words, to use the landscape, this was a big area, and you can't do anything with a mound in the middle. But we need to fill in the ditches and we need to use them. So we're starting to see people doing these things in a prehistoric context. People, that's the point I made, isn't it? That's the point. People forget about things and monuments and they think, oh, it's just a bloody mound over there. Just forget it. We'll just fill in this bloody ditch and whatever. We need it for agriculture, right? So we do see that in some contexts. And one of the big things that we need to big up is that when we think about prehistory, and we think about the Roman period and any period in history, we always have a tendency to blame. We always have a tendency to blame the modern day and age for filling in ditches, demolishing monuments, taking things away. But it's always happened in time. People have always done it. So the wider southern end of the barrow was faced with, let's just have a look at this image. Oh, hang on. Oh, let's just go with that one. There we go. This is the wider southern end of the barrow was faced with 6 massive sarsen slabs up to 3 meters tall. Sadly, only 4 of these facade stones remain. 4? Hang on, 6. 6? What? Hey? Ah, yes. Right. Okay. So let's talk about inferred evidence. Right. So, why have we gone there? Hang on a minute. Now, if you look at that, the reason why this doesn't fit well because it's not symmetrical, and the reason why it's not symmetrical, we bring in this here. There was a stone there. There was a stone there, and you can see from inferred archaeology, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So what they've done, they've assumed by thinking that this is going to be symmetrical, that there must have been one there because there's one over there, and there must have been one there because there's one there, right? So, and obviously you can see that this is in the archaeology. So they've bastardized the site. So in other words, when you go there, you think, right, okay, they've obviously always had this, hadn't they? No, they haven't, because there was a stone there, right? So for me as an archaeologist, I would have straightforward preferred them to have not put anything there at all, because what let's just leave it. And unfortunately, this has been the case since the 1960s from the reconstruction. And I'm sorry I go on about this, but I think history and archaeology is what we should see it, not what wasn't there, or what was once there and we put something else there instead. I tell you what, it was a pink house and a red house there. Do you know what I mean? It's just those. I don't know why I use that analogy, but anyway. So what we've got. So as we look at this photograph, we can see where the missing stones would have been, and the reconstruction of dry stone walling is used to link the facade stones. This was also employed between some of the smaller sarsen curb slabs used to line the barrow around the outside. So again, it does make me think that, whether you agree with this type of reconstruction and how we're seeing the past, whether it's right or wrong, make up your own mind on it, right? But this is sort of this is showing us what Aubrey saw, right? And he's showing 3 stones. And so if we go back, interestingly enough, there's 4 stones, right? So it's really difficult to work out if they may have reconstructed one of those as well. So through a gap between the facade stones, a 6-meter passage lined with sarsen slabs. So let's go to, I'm pressing the wrong button. So there we go, lined, there it is, there we go, a 6-meter passage leading to that thing in the end. Leads first through an antechamber into a cruciform. Oh my God, let's just look at the plan. There we go. So as we're looking at this, it's 6 meters long. And so it's lined with sarsen stones, oceliths, standing stones. You've got what's called an antechamber first, which is, in fact, get rid of that. So that is the antechamber there. That's the antechamber, right? And then it then leads down a corridor into what we would quite kindly call a transepted monument, which is that word transept, it across a crucifix, transepted monument. So that's what we're looking at. And so it leads to a chamber. Now, let's just, it doesn't look, you know, that at the end doesn't look like a chamber, but if we go to there, that is a chamber, right? And if we go in, that's a chamber. That's what it's leading to, right? And oh, and you're thinking, oh my God, that's not that impressive if we want to compare it with West Kennet Longbarrow, right? But then you're putting your thoughts and interpretations on another monument. When if you think about West Kennet Longbarrow, it's a completely different monument, a completely different setting, and maybe a different period in time. So it's saying that this is capped with sarsen stones weighing up to 3.5 tons in weight. And that's what that is, 3.5 tons in weight. And there you go. And that's what it's capped with. It's a very small chamber. It's a very small space compared with, say, if you want to talk about some of the South Wales ones. Within this part of the barrow, the disarticulated remains of 8 bodies, including a child. Drum roll. Oh my God, they found the child. Now, these were recovered not by our friend Atkinson and Piggott, who did the excavations at the back. This was excavated by Piers and Smith in 1919 and 1920. And the one interesting thing about this, there it is. And actually, you're looking on the left and the right, that's been reconstructed, the bits of sort of horizontal wall. So the bodies of, the remains of 8 bodies, including a child, were recovered. However, it is entirely probable other remains had already been removed from these chambers, either in later prehistory or in historic times, so the total number of people laid to rest within Wayland smithy will probably never be known. Right? I want to tell you something. I'm going to be very careful what I say, right? But to make proper spells, you go to a graveyard and you take soil off the top of a grave, right? And they make very powerful spells. It's also said that you can use human bones and grind them down to make very powerful spells as well. So with the history of witchcraft in Britain, human bones are very powerful enablers for spells, right? So these are the types of places that people would have gone to spell cast. But I want to tell you something else, another little fact. If you were a local dentist and you wanted to make a set of false teeth, then the local barrow would be a very good place to find teeth to make a set of dentures, And we're not talking about 1900s, we're talking about 1700s, right? Dentures have been used for, in fact, thousands of years. Also, another fact that archaeologists completely miss is that the glue making industry in the mid 1700s was very reliant upon bones, right? Ground down bones. And some of the softest and most porous bones that you could use in the glue making industry could come from locations like this. So it's quite likely that lots of them were being cleared out in the 1700s. And how do I know that? Well, I can tell you quite clearly. When lots of locations in Britain were cleared of human bones, or animal bones for that matter, but human bones were the best. Did you know, for example, after the Battle of Waterloo, when lots of the bodies had rotted down, people went to the Waterloo battle site, as well as they did go to Talavera, and did go to lots of battle sites on the continent. They would collect cartloads of human bones to bring back to Britain to make glue. And also, guess what was readily collected from Waterloo? Skulls of French soldiers, because Frenchmen had the best teeth. Those are facts. Sorry to get a bit morbid, but I just thought I wanted to put that in there because it's something that we don't talk about. Because hi-ho silver, blame it on the last 100 years that people have been into these monuments, looting them for human bones. But in fact, it's been going on for a long, long time. A single complete inhumation found between the Barrow Mound and the western side ditch. So let's go to that plan. And after this, we're going to take a break. There's a few other things that we need to say about Wayland Smithy, but let's just do this one little fact and then we'll take a break. So let's just look at that plan, the plan that I could never find. There you go. So never eat shredded wheat on the western side, left-hand side of the screen. It goes to say a single complete inhumation found between the Barrow Mound and the western side ditch is undated, but is probably a later intrusive burial, perhaps dating from the Bronze Age. So let's try and work out where that would be. So from the mound and the ditch, so that puts it somewhere. Oh, hang on, don't put it there. That puts it somewhere, if we change the color to there, somewhere in that area, right? So there's a burial, right? Now, that's rather interesting, right? If that possibly dates from the Bronze Age, right? If it does date the Bronze Age, there would have been an earthen mound on top of it. There's no reference to an earthen mound. So that means that we were right in presuming that there was once a mound there. These have been filled in, meaning later activity to clear the landscape in this area and this area, leaving the mound for agricultural activity after the prehistoric period and therefore into the future. So it's not all about what's going on now or the last 100 to 300 years. These types of things have been going on with our monuments for a very, very long time, right? So, you know, we can be appalled with things going on in our modern day and age, like the crooked house being demolished and so on. But people have always felt like this. They wanted to get rid of things and they thought, we'll start anew and do something else with it. So what we're going to do, we're going to call that a day. Oh, God, it's 9 o'clock. How the hell do I manage this? Right. Okay. It's 9 o'clock. So I'm going to take a break. Oh, Andy needs to know something, so we'll come on to that now. And okay, hang on. It's all gone wrong. Right, okay, and stop share. Right, okay, somebody's put something in the chat box. Andy's the only one who knows how to use the chat box, so we'll have a look. Oh, no, it's Margaret. By ambience, do you mean atmosphere? Yes, I mean atmosphere. Yes. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I've put my foot in it again by upsetting Margaret by saying nobody else can use the chat box. I know you can use the chat box, Margaret. I was just winding you up. Andy, my darling, I'd like to remind you that your next 2 monthly subs are due.
Hate it.
Oh my bloody God, I hate you guys. I really do. Peter did this to me.
I did that before I got online. That's yeah.
Yeah.
They've got one computer
Yeah.
working to be able to do that, but it wouldn't take Zoom.
Peter did this to me. You know what? Why do you people do it? You make sure I moan at you, right? And you slam it in my face. Peter, Andy. Woo!
Well, I left it deliberately late. Yeah.
Ye of
Yes, you
little
did.
faith.
Right, okay. On a very serious note, Andy, I've got the bad news is that I had a text yesterday, and the text was from Sandra's daughter Caroline to sadly say that Sandra passed away on Saturday.
Oh, thank you for telling me.
Yeah, well, I told everybody now, and I obviously we'll have to let David and Anne know next week, so I know everybody used to chat, and I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, do we have an address that we could send cards to or whatever?
Yeah.
Peter, we didn't think of that, did we, Pete? We'll have to, me and Pete will have a
No.
me and Pete will have a chat about that tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, just text us or email us if you can get something. If not, send one from all of us. But
Yeah, she was one of the team, wasn't she?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
she was one of the team. She was a team player. She's been with me longer than all of you, including Andy. She's been with me since 2007. I'll tell you another sub story. When my life went to tits and my marriage broke down and so on. In 2007, we had a class in Barry, and Sandra would be always one of those that have a moan at who seemed to understand because she was a social worker.
Oh, was she?
She had worked as a social worker, and then she decided that she was going to run a care home, and I think it was in Porthcawl. And then she had enough of that, and she decided to, I don't know, retire. So, and then she decided to, after her husband died, I'm never sure, Vincent, I'm never sure whether it was 3 years or 5 years, but when she came to the class, she had been roaming around a little bit. She was very bitter naturally. And because her husband sort of passed away within 6 months of retirement. And this is how she ended up with us. So
I think she'd been a nurse at some time, hadn't she?
I think that ties in with a social worker.
Yeah.
thingamajig.
Yeah.
Yeah, the social worker, care home nurse. Yeah, that makes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. What we're going to do is we will have a break because I've got to get baby Baldrick to bed, and he's waiting for me outside. So, right, Andy, anything from you, lovely?
No.
And the reason why we're not able to see Pat today because she's got a black eye, it's to do with the tear duct. She's had a bit of, I know, a bit of pressure, bit of an op there. So yeah, I can understand, Pat. That's understandable. Yes, I'm sure we can come up with all different ideas to draw the colour out there. Anything from you, Pat?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Pete.
No, not
Okay.
because it's all coming back to me with the visits to this place. Yeah, amazing place.
Yes, it is amazing. It is amazing. And actually, there is a link between this place, Arnside, and Andy, right? Because it was in 2011, right? and I'm not going to go into any detail, but we had a trip to Wayland smithy for the first time, and I had to be taken to the train station to take my first trip to Cumbria, and that's how I ended up in Cumbria, and that's how I ended up staying at Arnside, and a few months later I decided to advertise in the local newspaper, and Andy, we had a local class, so there's the link.
Very good.
Right, Margaret, anything?
Well, it strikes me, the present day mausoleums and crypts, aren't they very much like these tombs?
Yeah.
I think. Can I just? Something's just occurred to me. Right. Do you know, I mentioned that thing about the moon earlier on, whether it went in some of your heads and you thought, why the hell's Carl talking about this? But we're talking about technology declining and different types of things that we see in history, archaeology, and so on. What you see with the some people refer to it as the cult of the dead, and ancestors and all sorts of things. It seems that we go through waves of acknowledgement and waves of treating our loved ones in a deceased context, and so it's not to do with inhumations or cremations or churches and chapels, or crypts and so on. It seems to be the way that they were more prepared in the past to deal with their loved ones in this context. And in this day and age, I don't think we really are. It's almost as if we live so much longer and we've got so much technology that it's not really much around us. And you mentioned, ties in with what Margaret said, is like the mausoleums and types of things that we have today, very similar to what they've got back then. But Margaret, I'm going to say no, because we really don't have mausoleums and crypts today, do we? That's something of the Victorian period. So it's almost as if they were more prepared in the Victorian period, Margaret, because I think that's what you meant. They were more prepared then, and that's where the parallel is in the Victorian period, Margaret, with this Neolithic period, rather than today. Is that more what you were talking about?
Do they not build mausoleums and crypts anymore?
They do, but they do, but it's not a fashionable thing. How many of us have got mausoleums and crypts?
Well, it's for generally wealthy, important families, isn't it? The rest of us just go underground with a little stone with our name on.
I think you're being a bit harsh there, but I think I also know what you're talking about there as well. Yeah. No, but hang on a minute. There is another point there, right? There is another point. Right. Okay, Margaret. You're therefore presuming, Margaret, that these monuments in the past were for special people, were for special families. But that's not what I say. That's not what I sign up to. When we look,
might be though. It might be.
I'm gritting my teeth and saying, when we look at Mid-Howe, for example, okay, Margaret, the point that I made with Mid-Howe was that on the island of Rousey, a very small island, there's like 15, 20 of these monuments, right? Each family had one of these monuments. So the wealth spread on Rousey was the same, right? So maybe what we're doing is, maybe let's not make a comparison with Rousey, but when you make your comparison with this site, maybe you've got a point. In other words, what we're saying is it doesn't necessarily mean to say that all traditions in Britain are the same. Maybe this was for a certain popular family. But then there's a problem then, Margaret, that's there's a big problem then, because populations back then were lot limited,
Smaller,
right?
Yeah.
So this would have just been for a family grouping, right? But as society expands and there's more people, then you get these barrows and things for specific people, because everyone else goes somewhere else. I think that's the better comparison, Margaret.
Would it have been easier to build a barrow to put people in than digging down to put somebody under the ground with the tools that they had?
Let's not restrict ourselves with the word tools, because that means that they're, they did dig these ditches, Margaret. The ditches were dug to create the mound, right? So that's an important point. However, when you've got access like you've got with Mid Howe and something like this, and West Kennet Long Barrow, yeah, it's on level. You could just go in and out, so that makes sense. So it's far easier to keep people within the moment,
above the ground in a shelter.
Above the ground, like they do in India, like they do in some Buddhist communities, like they do in lots of other cultures. Like years ago in Egypt, for example, the reason why you had a garden in Egypt was that you would put your loved ones in the garden.
Yeah. And they didn't decompose as quickly as if they were put under the ground.
And when they don't decompose, and you've got very arid conditions, that deals with the problems of putrefaction, and that deals with the problems of smell. So you've got all these other things. And if you're exposing bodies as well out in the open, when the flesh is gone, and you collect the long bones and you put them in there. So you've got all these different... What we're trying to say, Margaret, is we're trying to agree with you, and we're trying to disagree, and we're trying to say at the same time, is archaeology doesn't have set rules within the Neolithic period, which is clearly coming through. You cannot compare Mid Howe that we did last week with this monument. And you cannot compare this monument with, for example, West Kennet Long Barrow. You can't compare Maes Howe with this monument. They're all different things going on at different times.
It looks a bit like the West Kennet one, though, doesn't it?
It does look like a bit like the West Kennet one, but the point I made is that it's a miniature West Kennet, because you can stand in the West Kennet Long Barrow. You can't stand in this one.
Right.
This is one clear thing that Peter can remember. You couldn't stand in it, but you could stand in the one at West Kennet Long Barrow. That is the difference. So what we're trying to say is different traditions in different localities of the country, giving different formulas. So this is why I was a bit aggrieved with sort of agreeing that this is an aristocratic thing when populations are smaller, when we've got bigger populations. What we're trying to say in the Georgian period and the Victorian period, we've got an elite, right? And we've got lots of money. We've got lots of money about, right? So then we can have this going on. Then this happens, right? Then you can have mausolea, right? Which you couldn't do before. And then, Margaret, the interesting point is, Margaret, then again, tradition changes, because what they realized in London, like Hyde Park, was that you couldn't do this anymore because there were too many people being buried.
Exactly, yeah.
So then you've got to cremate people.
Yeah.
And actually, I was given some kind of weird lecture on this. There was a train line that ran up until the 1940s. There was actually, you can look this up online, it's from memory. There was a train line that led from the heart of London out that was only for dead people.
Ooh.
It was a train that took corpses out of London to be buried. And there was actually a train station that was just for the dead.
Oh.
Yeah,
Was that
Brookwood?
Yeah, Andy, tell us something.
Yeah, there's a big cemetery out towards Surrey called Brookwood, and there's definitely a station there for that.
Wow.
And that's where, if there's any big disasters like air crashes, invariably people get still buried there. So it's probably that one.
Yeah, it was an active train line all the way, I think, up until the late 1940s. and obviously, I think cremation was the thing by the 1940s anyway. And obviously we had no choice, but London was being bombed to buggery, you know, and you know, we had nearly 90,000 dead in the Second World War, and cremation was the best way. And then things changed with our communication, with how we deal with our deceased, which is a constant story that we're getting with archaeology. And I'm sure Sandra would love this lecture. I know it's the ironic, but Sandra would love talking about this type of thing. She really would.
Do you remember
yeah.
those plague victims? There were some in Levens and some down south that were found.
Yes.
Recently.
Yes.
They found that some of them, the ones down south, had injuries, had fatal injuries.
But they survived.
Well, no, it was at the time of death.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I thought you were talking about something else. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
No, the bodies that they discovered that had the disease, had signs of fatal injuries.
Yeah.
So whether they'd been killed because of the disease or it was just by accident that they, they didn't know. So there was a bit of violence going on there.
Lots of things going on. Yes. We did do that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Quickly. I don't know if anyone else wants to say. Drina, quick. I think we missed out Drina last week 3 times. Drina.
No, nothing. Thank you.
Right. Okay. It's strange enough. It's very dark.
It is. Yeah.
It's very, very dark.
It's
so
autumn.
Yeah. So hopefully Pat will stay with us. We're gonna have a break for no more than 10 minutes, so 9:28ish, because it's 10-minute break, and then we'll be back.
Okay.
So anyone watching online,
Thanks.
we got a 10-minute break.
Andy, were you involved in that rescue when they were doing the training and somebody fell up to their waist in the quicksand? Were you involved with that?
No, and as far as I know, it's absolute rubbish.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because the guy that runs Bait Search and Rescue went and got stuck up to his waist to be rescued, and I think there's been a mix-up about that. There was, as far as I know, there was no rescue whatsoever.
Oh,
Where did you see the story? Because I've been trying to find that. So.
it was in the Westland Gazette.
All right, I might have a look at that. Thanks. Yeah, we've had quite a few call-outs, but no, not that. No, running after a dog yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, over at Bolton Sands there. It had gone across the other side of the channel as the tide was coming in, and the owners were getting really worried about it, of course, and threatening to go out. So we chased it back with the hovercraft.
Did you?
Yeah.
God, I bet the dog was excited, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a young spaniel, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they're a
but,
bit bonkers as spaniels. aren't
Yeah. That's I think that's the second spaniel we had. The last one went missing at the same spot at Bolton Sands and ended up at Silverdale.
they? Good grief.
Yeah, somebody collared it there, but we had a guy with dementia that had gone missing in Morecambe the day before. So we
Ooh.
found him all right. He'd just gone walkabout. So
Into the bay.
no, just walking along the promenade. He's just gone missing. So
Did you see the flag event?
I saw some of it. Yeah, we what were we doing? We got called out somewhere.
Yeah, I just saw the beginning of it. It was very impressive.
Yeah, I was going to watch. There was a Bay Walk because that was the last one. Well, there's actually another one, but that was the last public one on Sunday, and that's when we got called out to the guy missing in Morecambe. So.
Well, you've been quite busy then.
Well, go on.
How did Claire enjoy her archaeology on Arran?
Oh, loved it.
Yeah.
Had a ball. She keeps threatening to show me pictures, but hasn't done yet. I'll go and get that T-shirt she got me. Hang on a sec.
Oh, okay. Is there any chance you'll go to Orkney again, Pete, or are those days over?
No, those days are out. My motorhome's gone now.
Oh.
Sold it.
Might be too close here. Let's see. Get it. Oh, hang on. I am a bit too close.
Yeah. Archaeology. Hang on. Like
Life history.
History, but dirtier.
You got it because it got the skeleton on, because it's got all of us one that have been on that dig at Beetham when we was excavating the bodies.
It's good, that.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
What music do you think you'd have playing at your funeral, Andy?
Oh, there's a track by Pink Floyd called Comfortably Numb, which I thought would be appropriate. Make people laugh as well, I think. So.
My mother liked brass band music, so she.
Oh, that'd be jolly. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the floral dance.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother suggested Ring of Fire, but we didn't think that was appropriate.
I've actually danced the floral dance.
Yeah.
In Helston, yes.
Oh.
I went to school in Helston.
Peter
At
Sellers.
my wife's funeral, my wife was a big Elvis fan.
Oh, right.
And as the coffin was going out, we were playing Love Me Tender
Oh, nice.
by Elvis, and it was lovely.
Yeah.
The rocket, the record ended at that, and Jailhouse Rock came on.
Oh, fantastic.
And I must admit, the daughters, they loved it. They said that she would have absolutely loved it.
Jailhouse Rock, yeah. I Want Spread a Little Happiness by Sting. I love that.
Peter Sellers had The Sun Has Got His Hat On.
Did
for
he?
everyone to leave. Yeah.
What would you have, Trina?
I've no idea. I quite like Rufus Wainwright.
Oh, I
So
know
might-
you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still searching. Sometimes you find a tune and you think, yeah, but you don't write it down. And then I forget.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to have playing, Carl?
Men Without Hats,
Men Without Hats.
the safety dance.
Yeah.
You can dance if you want to. That
Oh,
one.
yes.
Do we all have to wear vests, fluorescent vests and things, and hard hats?
Well, you've got to, or you can be issued with some of these trousers. But then again,
Yeah. Or go psychedelic. Yeah.
yeah, you've got to be
Oh, yeah.
psychedelic. Yeah,
I
and also I always remember it was Graham Chapman, Monty Python. I think he died in 1984.
oh,
That was always look on the bright side of life.
Oh,
And
yeah.
at the funeral,
Yeah,
they were
that-
they were slagging him off terribly, right?
that was
But they loved him to bits, and that's a Monty Python sort of
yeah, that's a good song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So on that note, we're gonna crack on. Oh, you know what? Right, I thought I put the kettle on. I didn't.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Hang
What
on
sort of
minute.
a break
Yeah.
is that?
Well,
It's like
Oh,
not having
I
cake.
do.
I tell you what. We're gonna multitask, right? I'm gonna get
Oh,
my
no.
my cup's got the tea bag there. For God's sake.
This is a disaster waiting to happen, isn't it?
I've got a
Carl
great,
multitasking.
I've got a great big book out of our library.
yeah.
The Mediterranean and the Mediterranean world in the age of Philip II. And it's
Ooh.
so heavy. Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember that one now.
Oh, Think-
You've got a book on Philip II.
look,
I know the Mediterranean world under Philip II.
Oh my God! Look at the size of that book.
Well, it's a big place.
it's about 50 odd pounds in
Ooh.
money, is this?
Only the best for our library.
Hang on a minute. Let's do Philip II, Mediterranean under Philip II. Well, under that book.
Yeah.
In the age of Philip II by Fernand Braudel.
Brodel.
It's a classic.
Of course it is.
Hey, and what's also a classic, right? We were driving to this concert yesterday, right? And I don't listen to BBC Radio 2, but I didn't have my theatrical music on, so I put on because somebody texted me from the Kylie Minogue fan club. They said it's the Kylie Minogue top number 20 hit thing on BBC. Every single for 20 Kylie Minogue hits in a row, right? And Michelle was getting so miserable listening to this music. I thought, right,
No.
do you know what? We only got through 4 Kylie Minogue hits, and we had to turn it off. So I thought, I'm not going to have any of them at my funeral. Nobody's going to turn up. Anyway, let's crack on. Let's crack on. So, oh, my kettle's just boiled. Hang on. Right, good.
That's a bit of an eclectic mix, isn't it? Kylie Minogue and Hawkwind.
And a kettle that sings, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I was talking to somebody about doing recording some music yesterday. I'm going to send Peter some copies of it as well. On that note, right, we are going to crack on. Pete loves my singing, particularly when he's got to put up with it for several hours in the car.
Do you like Shirley Bassey as well?
Shirley Bassey's Sending the Clowns is brilliant.
It is.
Yeah.
She's from Wales, isn't she?
Aye, South
Tiger
Wales.
Bay,
Yeah.
Cardiff.
Yeah.
Cardiff girl.
Tiger Bay.
She's from
Yeah.
Tiger Bay in Cardiff, yeah.
Hmm.
I can't in Cardiff House. Hey, I've got to get on with where I was.
Well, all right,
Maybe
then.
Pat's gonna want to go. Hey, and I got a little pink band on my arm as well. The other band playing last night was actually Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons.
Don't know them.
I've heard of
But-
them.
That plans.
Basic, Phil Campbell was in Motorhead, right?
Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
The lead singer of Motorhead was Lemmy. Lemmy
Yeah.
originally was in Hawkwind, so there's a link.
Mm.
Right. So what we were talking about.
There's another
before the
link
bro-
there as well.
Yeah, go on, give it to us.
They're all dead.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's also another. Andy. There's also another link. There's also another link, Andy. Right.
Yeah.
Basically, one of the chief members of Hawkwind early on
Yeah.
was a certain Mr. Turner, right?
Yes.
And he was massively into history and archaeology. And
Was he? I didn't know that. No.
I had actually met him several times, and he was also an artist in his later years.
Yeah,
And
Nick Turner. Yeah.
yeah, Nick Turner. And the one thing that Hawkwind has never ever played in a castle before, and I think
Right.
because he passed away last year, it was a tribute to him.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave Brock passed away fairly recently as well, didn't he? He was
Ex-
the other founding
Exactly,
member.
exactly.
imagine life without music, you know.
No, that's called extreme Islam, isn't it? Like with the Taliban,
What?
they ban music.
Yeah.
Well, there's one thing about it. Everyone's turning into a Muslim when it comes down to my funeral, particularly when I insist that the entire playlist is Kylie Minogue. Right, okay, then let's crack on.
Okay.
Right, so what we were talking about, this got really morbid today. Bloody hell. Right, okay, so Wayland Smithy, and we were talking about that there was burials on the left-hand side between the chamber and that ditch. And we were talking about the landscape being flattened and changed and altered, and lots of shifting ideas and beliefs. And the wording you actually used, maybe I should have said this. Maybe I should have said this as we were finishing before the break. The lines are, after this being a Neolithic, a chambered landscape, in the Bronze Age, there was a shift between using chambers like this and enclosed barrows. So that really ties us in with the conversation that I was having with Margaret. I should have pushed her a little bit further. And then there was another link. Crypts you can open, right? Mausolea you can open. That's the whole point. These you can open. That's the whole point. Then we started burying people underground, and you couldn't dig somebody up because they're 6 foot under, right? That's sort of today. Or we put somebody in a little jar, cremation urn, because you've been cremated. So that's very different from a crypt or something like this. So this was the shift in the Neolithic period from having monuments like this to actually having people in barrows under the ground. So that's the clear shift. Now, one thing we've got to do, and maybe I mentioned this to Peter at the time whilst we were there, the legends associated with Wayland Smithy. And sometimes what I don't do is look at legends with these sites, because sometimes the voice of people's expression for the past can be seen in the myths and legends that they have for these sites. So obviously Wayland, or Voiland or Voilud, was the name of a smithy, a Germanic smithy. And this accounts for the name that we already know about in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles for this locality back in 950 years AD. And the interpretation of Wayland Smithy by antiquarians comes around first in 1738. So they obviously knew this as Wayland Smithy's cave, because in a way it's like cave-like. It's a little bit cave-like. And and also, can I just tell you something? In the next few years, I will be discovering something that I discovered 15 years ago, which is something like this in South Wales. And it looked very similar to this. And so when I rediscover that site, and obviously these things are out there still to be discovered. And they are like this. They're weird little pockets under the ground. They're not like normal burial chambers. So at this place, it's said in 1738 by a Francis Wise, at this place lived formerly an invisible smith. And if a traveller's horse had lost a shoe upon the road that went near this, he had no more to do than to bring the horse to this place with a piece of money, and leaving both there for some little time, he might come again and find the money gone, but the horse has been newly shod. I tell you what, that'd be a good ruse for gypsies, wouldn't it? If you sort of bring your horse along and we just go off with the horse as well. That's a good idea, Pete. Don't give me any ideas. Right, another story claims Wayland was the blacksmith who provided the shoes for the famous Uffington horse, Pete, which is located a mile and a half away to the northeast, and which itself gallops towards the nearby Uffington Castle Hill Fort, which we've already mentioned, which is just sort of over the hills and far away, just a little bit south of Uffington Horse. Other legends say a golden coffin is buried nearby, and that an underground passage leads from Wayland Smithy to the nearby village of Ashbury. That's an interesting thing, to be honest with you, right? It makes me ask the question, why the archaeologists Atkinson and Piggott dug a hole at the back of this chamber. How did they know that there was another monument there without LiDAR? Or were they looking for something associated with ancient stories of a hidden wonder? Now, additional notes.
Dowsing.
Okay, Pete, you don't get archaeologists dowsing. We might find things. We actually used a dowser one day to find a cemetery, Pete, and it was the place of a church, and there was no graves there at all, and we know there was no graves there because the dowser said there's no graves here. So we excavated the whole area and didn't find a single grave, and the dowser was right. Anyway. Another story claims Wayland was the blacksmith. Oh, we've already done that. Right, additional notes. 2 strips of iron found buried by one of the main stones were originally thought to be Iron Age currency bars. These are now thought to be broken pieces of a crowbar lost in an attempt to dislodge one of the stones in the 1700s. Very, very interesting that in front, they found these bits of iron bar, and they've been completely misinterpreted as Iron Age currency bars. It's interesting that leads into the smithy concept, Wayland Smithy. Now, there's one thing that it couldn't have been the location of a smithy, because they didn't have smithies in the Neolithic period. But all legends are good to hear about. And as we look, Sir Cole Hall was one of those barrow diggers, recorded that there were only 4 facade stones, but Cole Hall said that all the facade stones were actually fallen over, every single one of them, and that explains the plan from Aubrey in 1670. He said that the facade stones were all fallen over. So in other words, when you go to the monument, that is not what you originally saw in the early 1800s. It's been re-erected. And is that correct? Because for me, I might do something else. If we reannotate these stones, that one there would fit nicely there. And that one there would fit nicely there, and that would fit nicely there. So do you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to get at? That doesn't look right. Pete, does that look right? What you're seeing without, if you, you know, when you went there, Pete, your experience, did it look right? You feel it. Go with it. You saw it. Did that look right?
Well, we thought so.
We thought so. I thought so, but I didn't have this information in front of me. In the
No.
early 1800s, those 4 stones were not like that. At some stage between then and the 1920s, they'd been re-erected. Had they been re-erected properly? It's that. The point is, right, now, I don't know if we're going to have enough time to do the maes howe bit, but we will do a bit of maes howe. If we look at if we look at maes howe and we go to which is
The
maes
entrance to
howe,
my house online with another monument, isn't it?
yes, it is. What basically maes howe itself, these long, the black lines, right, are actually long lengths of stones, right? And they believe that there was actually a stone circle with these long lengths of stones lining, and they were reused, and they were used to line the wall of this passageway at maes howe, right? So if we think of the way that this may have originally looked, right, they may have actually been side on rather than vertical like that.
Yep.
Right. Interesting thought. That looks better like that, right? If you move it, if you orientate those stones properly, right? That's the point. I'm not telling you that's the case, but for me, that doesn't look right. Right. As is usual the case with tombs of this period, no grave goods were found, although a quern stone found to the left of the passage may represent some kind of ritual deposit, or may be from another time period. Now, what I was going to make, hang on a minute, one second, folks. It's my daughter. Hang on, 1 second. Stay there. Hiya, Bethan. Yeah, because I'm in the middle of the lecture. Carry on. Go on. Earlier on today, but why? Just because you want to know where they are. Who wants to know where they are? They're at home. Yeah, I tell you what, can I give you a call back in about 20 minutes? Yeah, go for it. Because I'm in the middle of a lecture. I'll call you back in 20 minutes. Speak to you soon. Bye. Sorry, folks. I got 2 of my children gone missing. Never mind. Right. Anyway. Right. So what? Oh God. Sorry, guys. I had to get that. It was my children. Right. Can one of you give me a where I was in that lecture? I was. Yeah. Right.
You're turning the stone side on.
Right. Stone side on. Right. Basically, in the book by Joshua Pollard. Right, we've got some amazing images that I wanted to show you in this lecture today, which I've got in front of me, which I'm going to show you next week. So we'll look at this, and you can see the higgledy-piggledy nature of the bones that have been excavated at Wayland smithy. Back to this, however, this is what I was going to say. There's an archaeologist called Darvill, right? Darvill, right? And he looks at this site, right? This is his bent. This is his prehistory is his thing, right? He says about this. So maybe we'll look at the plan. We'll look at the plan, and there. We'll look at the plan. Darvill suggests that the filling of the chambers and closing of the barrow Hang on. And if we go to, hang on, not in a pickle. This stage, right? The closing of this, right? He suggests that it was to protect the burial remains. That's interesting. They're backfilling it to protect it. That's interesting. It's not a word we come across. We'll go on to that in a minute. Not necessarily, perhaps the purpose was to protect the living rather than the dead. As belief systems changed in the late Neolithic, early Bronze Age. So when this had been finished, when we're going into the Bronze Age, so the Bronze Age is 4,100 years ago. This is the Neolithic period, 5,400 years ago, right? Darville says that a belief system changed in the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, and the barrow relics of previous generations may have been regarded with suspicion and superstition, to be best avoided and blocked up to prevent the spirits of the dead wandering abroad. We need to look at this. This is interesting. This was taken to extremes with the massive blocking stones placed across the entrance to West Kennet Long Barrow in Wiltshire. Now, Darville says something else here, which we will mention, right? And we got some images that I just want to show you at the end here, right? But that's really, really interesting, right? That's from a prehistoric archaeologist. That's really, really interesting. So if we go to that, right? Basically, you can imagine, right? If we go into the vein, right? It's it's been left open, right? Hundreds of years have gone by. 1,000 years have gone by, and people are thinking there's bones in there or there's something in there. Let's just fill it up. We just don't want anything to do with it anymore. We're just really superstitious, right? We need to block it up to stop the spirits of the dead wandering abroad, right? We don't know who these people are. They're not related to us. Let's fill it up, right? Now, that's an interesting point, right? Most archaeologists say that these monuments were blocked up in the Neolithic period by the Neolithic people, by the people who actually used these monuments. That's what we say with West Kennet Long Barrow. But what Darville is saying, he's saying, no, what happened later on is that people backfilled these monuments. They didn't want anyone going in there. They just wanted to backfill them. They just wanted to leave the bones in there, everything in there. They wanted to fill them up, right? The superstitions of the dead wandering abroad. Now, for me, my experience of something like this was in Cyprus in 1983. Now, I've got to tell you about this. In Cyprus in 1983, I went to a site which is a church site, which is a graveyard. And the church site with this graveyard had the mosaics of Dionysus, Leda story, and Dionysus, the swan Dionysus. So there was these mosaics there, and we looked in amongst the church graveyard, and we could see that lots of the graves had been smashed open, and you could see the bones in them, right? And this was to do with Turkish soldiers, apparently, who were looking for items in the graves. And the war ended in 1975, because it started in 1974. I think it was a very short war anyway. That's the one with Macarius, and basically when I was looking around when I was looking around this graveyard, my thought was that we've got to fill in these graves. It was you could see these human remains. We felt violated that we're seeing human remains. So that's my experience of something very similar to this. That this has been backfilled, and people were very superstitious. They wanted the spirits left. They wanted to hide them. This is what Darville is saying. And if you're getting what I'm saying about the graves in Cyprus, the graves in Cyprus themselves in 1983 felt like to me that you can't see these bones. You've got to backfill them. You can't allow them. That's my experience. Maybe Darvell's right, maybe he's wrong. Lots of archaeologists say that these types of monuments were filled in the Neolithic period by the people who had relatives in them. Darvell is saying no, there was a delay and they were filled in the Bronze Age. Very interesting perspective, that. Also, our friend Darvell also said, he alludes to the contrast between the shapes of the facade stones. Right, let's go to that. Okay, here we go. Hang on. Let's go to the shapes of these stones, right? He says about the shapes of these stones, the facade stones, either squat, lozenged, or tall, or flat-topped, and suggests that this may represent some form of female-male symbolism, which immediately puts us in mind of a similar duality that exists with West Kennet Avenue, where you've got tall stones, small squat stones, tall stones, small squat stones, right? The only problem is when you're looking at something like this is that I can't see that. I can't see male and female. What I can see is this has been mucked around with. And if it has been mucked around with, then I can't really see that. So what we're going to do is have a quick look at a few more images. It's 9:53. I'm not sure we can get to the other bit of the lecture. The description of this image is view along the entrance passageway towards the chamber. You can go into this, and you've got, that's called a sill stone. The stone in front of us is called a sill stone. And you get lots of sill stones like this, which are classed as blocking stones, but it's not completely blocked, right? There's in lots of these monuments, you have a stone like this, right, which is in the front of the chamber, but people can still get in there, right? So that's not completely blocking. But what Darvell is saying, that this monument was completely filled up with stone, earth, and so on, right? And one thing that I would say is something very similar to this is that when you look at Etruscan tombs, in Etruscan tombs, they have something similar, but you can still get into them. It was to stop sheep and other animals wandering in. That's what that says to me as a practical person working with animals, right? If you could, a sheep ain't going to go in there, a cow ain't going to go in there. You could stop animals going in there. That makes more sense to me. That's a more practical way. So obviously, if we're looking at this, this is how John Aubrey's sketching this. While Aubrey draws a rather confusing jumble of stones representing the chamber on the south side there, it says south, possibly reflecting a poor state of preservation of the site, the sketch is nevertheless reasonably accurate for the time and shows a good representation of the size and shape of the mound, and that the stones are in a higgledy-piggledy nature, not stood erect. Also, we've got another image, right? Now, this is drawn by a chap by the name of John Young Ackerman, showing the ruinous state of the site in 1847, drawn to the same orientation as the other plans that we've seen. And if you're looking at this, it's how is it showing the stones? It doesn't show. For me, it shows maybe 3 stones upright rather than 4. So that goes back to the original point that these stones have been re-erected and altered and mucked around with, and it looks very, very odd that. And in fact, if you look at that in another way, right? You know what I was saying, if you look at this in this way, the orientation is that the front is there, right? If you take the image in a different way from 1847, the entrance, that is the front. And can you see any stones standing up? None. So in fact, they may have completely altered this site in a perspective. So what the stones that me and obviously they didn't have photography back then, but there's something really, really not quite right. And also, right, also, I'm going to show you this. Do you know what? In lectures, I like you to keep your minds open. Right. Hang on. But this settles it. Hang on. We look at this, right? And if you look at this plan, the entrance is to the right. Ackerman shows that the uprights of the chamber and passageway were largely still intact and as we see them today, but that only a single capstone remains in place over the eastern chamber. The other capstones were placed during the reconstruction. So if you're looking at that and looking what I'm seeing, right, there is no upright stones at all. And in fact, even though the reconstruction doesn't look accurate, if we're looking at this as a plan from the past, it's very likely that many, many stones have been moved since 1847. So again, this is a lot about how archaeology is perceived, how archaeology is reconstructed. Oh, sorry. There you go, Drina. One thing I wanted to do today was I wanted us to look a little bit about maes howe. And I don't know if you all want me to just mention a little bit, and we'll start with maes howe next week. And you know, when we go to maes howe, it's really got late now. I've run out of time, but I'm just going to mention that when you go to maes howe, beautiful landscape, beautiful mounds. We've seen this many times inside. And again, looking from inside the chamber outwards down the passageway. And we've got the passageway leading here, recess, central chamber, cells on the left, cells on the right, cells in front. Now, if we want to just continue the previous theme, right? Can you see the roof there? You see the roof, right? Now, that to me is interesting. It looks old, right? But it's not always been like that, because that's what it used to look like. And that's what it looked like when they were excavating the site, right? And you can clearly see that the roof is a reconstruction. Now, I'm not really sure that we got the style of the roof right at maes howe. But what I would like to do is come back to this next week, and I want to just show you one little image at the end, though. And it's this image. These are actually carvings, which are actually found inside maes howe, and we've got lots of different carvings. We've also got carvings that might be from a previous period, i.e. from the Neolithic period, rather than just the runes that we're usually referred to when you go to the chamber at maes howe. If you look in this image, you've got lots of the rune stones, right? You can see the rune stones on that stone there, rune stones on the right. But this site itself is very much showing that the roof has collapsed in. It's now been reconstructed. And again, if we look at something like this is very, very different than the monument that we've just looked at with Wayland Smithy. And you can see the size of this chamber. You could stand up on it, absolutely completely different from Wayland Smithy. And that's a story that we're going to look at next week. So what we're going to do, we're going to ask if there's any questions now. It is gone past 10 o'clock, and it'd be silly for me to embark on another lecture, which should take us to 11. So we're going to call that a day now. So thank you very much. And any questions? And thank you very much for promptly putting all your monies in the bank account this week. And talking about people who probably want to go very early, it's Pat. Pat, yes. Anything you'd like to say?
Nope. I enjoyed visiting those places, so that was grand. I'm glad we went when we did.
And now you know a little bit more from from your memories, which is great. And both sites stand out very much. They're not lost in the humps and bumps and banks and ditches that you've been with me, Pat and Peter. So these both sites stand out very much so, Pat. Anything else you want to say?
Oh, that's it. Just goodbye. I'm going home, going to bed.
Hey, Pat, we will see you next week. Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Pat.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Pat.
Bye-bye. Right, okay then. We're going to ask if there's any questions from Drina.
No, none at all. No, it was good. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, is Andy there a minute? Andy, we love your shirt and we all want one, and now you've got to get one for all of us. Sorry, Andy, it's your own fault. Mind you, I think everyone wants some of my trousers as well. Can you imagine one of those shirts, Andy, in my trousers?
Ah,
You can see them going. Yeah. Can you see Pete with one of those shirts and these wandering through Barry? They would love it. Andy, anything you'd like to say?
No, that the different sort of stages of development of the smithy is really interesting, isn't it? I noticed on the was it 2004 or 2007 the Derville drawing, this plan, that the stones that are now in existence on the side of the barrow are where the trenches were from the earlier one. So I'm wondering whether it's because of the ground was a little unstable and that. Also, on the trenches that they used to excavate, have you noticed on the northern end they all curl round at the top on the original ones?
Hang on, Andy. We can't do this without a plan. Come on.
Absolutely.
Get it in there. Right, okay, let's go to should we have the big one? Yeah, there we go. Describe. So obviously you're talking about subsidence into the previous ditch, and that was on the other plan, but this plan shows the top end, the north end of all those trenches all curl round in, which is really strange. Yeah, they do.
Like feel
everything curls in. Oh god, that's spinal. Oh god, yeah, it's something weird about you just saying that. I don't know, just yeah.
But interesting, very interesting site.
Very interesting. And you know what? I know I go on a lot about reconstruction and this and that. I'm quite angry that that when you look at even Stonehenge and they're reconstructing Stonehenge in the 1950s, and I'm thinking, but why? Oh God. Okay, I tell you what we'll do, we'll go to our below, right, and we'll put the stones upright. Now, were they upright in the first place? We can have this debate.
Yeah.
How much of the past you change to meet what we feel? And one of the things that really, I'm sorry, we've gone back into the lecture. One of the things that really blows my mind is that where are the upright stones?
Yeah.
And also, if we're going to look at that, right? If we're going to look at that, if that's the crucifix, right? If that's the crucifix, so you got the crucifix at the back, right? So if we go back to this, right? So the front is on the right hand side. And how is that capstone there? And you're just thinking, how many stones are actually there compared with what we've got later on? And there's no upright. Whatever way you look at this, right? There's no uprights on the front. There's no those four stones that we're seeing. They're not upright.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because you don't know how accurate these drawings are, unfortunately. Although that one would appear to be fairly accurate. But that other illustration you showed, the trees behind it, the etching one, they were all very stylized. But that doesn't mean to say that the stones aren't accurate, of course.
It's like an artist's impression. Artists like to do things aesthetically pleasing, so they might have moved things about to make it look nicer.
But what is the common element of all that is that the stones are all in disarray.
Yeah.
So,
And that is the point. They've been reorganized to be in array, and that is a problem. If that's the case, they've been reorganized, then have we missed other stages of what this was?
Yeah, possibly.
So, oh God. Anyway, right, sorry.
That's all part of its history as well, though,
Where's
isn't
the
it? So,
mound? Where's the big mound?
Yeah.
no,
yeah.
was there ever one?
Oh my God, Andy, I was just about to say that. Was there ever a mound? That's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, there
Yes.
is now. So when was the mound built?
Yeah. If
When was the mound built? Exactly. So this is the Dalville saying, obviously, everything being backfilled and so on, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Ugh.
right. Okay.
Interesting.
Right,
Darville's
okay.
theory is interesting too about the backfilling at a later date to respect or cover the dead. Yeah.
Or to get rid of it. That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
what I was trying to do, I was a bit thrown earlier on because I had a phone call of my daughter, but I managed to get back. But I was trying to say about Cyprus, it was that we were seeing bones. It was like, we can't have bones there. You know, we don't usually see bones in a church graveyard, right? Why are they there? They need to be backfilled. It's abhorrent. You know, let's just fill them in. It was just, my dad pointed down, look, there's human bones there. There's a skull. I thought, oh my God. You don't have to see, sorry to say, you don't have to see bones in a graveyard because they're supposed to be covered up.
Spooky.
Yeah. Well, it depends where you go, doesn't it? I mean, there's a lot of crypts now that got all the bones stacked up, haven't they? You can go into, mainly in Europe, not in Britain, but
Those catacombs under
yeah,
Naples. Ah.
yeah.
And loads of monks pinned to walls. Yeah, that's a nice way to be. Yeah, good. Yeah, I've seen that in Italy. They're really weird there. You get all these little monks sort of tied on the wall as you, hey, hi, and you get to kiss their feet. Right, moving on. Talking about kissing feet. We've asked Peter. We've done Margaret. Yeah. No, hang on. We've done Andy. We've asked Margaret.
Well, I've kind of butted in a few times, haven't I?
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
No, nothing else to say, really. I just wonder when we started finding death and dead bodies spooky and frightening. When did all that happen? Because back then it was accepted as part of life, wasn't it? Really,
it was part of their life. It really was.
Just when it all changed.
Well, that's how we interpret it today.
Yeah, that's our interpretation today, rather exactly.
Well, they found it acceptable.
They may have done. They may not have done.
Oh, you sounded like me now.
It certainly was more part of daily. I was going to say daily life, wasn't it? Death was in your face more often. We hide it now. So
I wonder if they had somebody that performed the burial, or if the family did it themselves, or if
oh my God,
interesting.
they appointed a particular person to deal with it like we do these days.
The problem is, I was thinking about this sort of modern society thing. You know, you've got to have police, you've got to have doctors, you've got to have opticians, you've got to have this. Well, this is because we've got big society. If you've only got 20 people living on an island, right, you can't have a doctor, you can't have a policeman, you can't have a warden, you can't have a shopkeeper. You've got 20 people and you've all got to muck in, right? So this is what their society was like. This is small numbers of people working in a very small landscape. And it is quite a small landscape because, you know, they're surrounded by trees. They're surrounded by a landscape that is very few people. You know, in the Neolithic period, you're talking about 1 million people spread across the whole of Britain. How many people is that? It's not a lot. Today we've got 70 million people, and you can still walk from me all the way to North Wales without seeing anybody. Well, you could walk all the way from Land's End to John O'Groats without seeing a single person in 30, 40 days, or how long it takes to walk. So, you know, it'd probably take 50 days because it's full of trees and all the bloody rest of it. But the point is that it's very likely that mourning was a very personal thing back then, and that's the point.
There's plenty of examples of other cultures as well, where they nearly all do the same sort of thing. They cleanse the bodies and prepare them and things in whatever ritual, but they still go through the same process of getting them ready for the next part of that journey or the end or whatever they believe in.
And that's a very personal thing, Andy.
It is, and it's usually the families that do it. So
that group, exactly, that group. So that's sort of answering your question, Margaret. Anything else, Margaret?
No, very interesting. Thank you.
What about you, Peter?
No, it was a good one. No,
Thank you very much.
Well,
yes, you do, and Pat did as well. So, right, okay. The last one is Drina.
Oh, you've done me. Nothing. Thank you.
Okay, I've done you. Okay. Then anyway, thanks for your continued support. Hopefully, I don't know if you want to say if you like the listening pillar as well. That's brilliant. I will try and keep me and Peter will have a chat tomorrow about Sandra, and we'll keep everybody up to date.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
good night all.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say good night all. It's been a blast, Andy. If there's nothing else, Peter, Margaret, and Drina, take care. Look after yourselves.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. My pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure. Right, I'm gonna have to dash, folks. I've got a family crisis to deal with, and yes, I'm trying to keep professional and missing children. So here we go. By ambience, do you mean atmosphere? I didn't know you could put thumbs up on these things. 2 thumbs. Anyway, this is in the chat box. You know, I'd like doing the chat box. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to support me in whatever way, join and so on. So we're going to do on here on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. 5, 6, 7. No, I haven't seen any messages of anyone today. None at all. If you have been putting messages on that, I'm sorry, I haven't got them. Okay. Okay, nothing else in there other than by ambience, do you mean atmosphere? I do mean atmosphere. On 3, 2, 1, close the window and go. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care. Night, folks. Night. Bye.